So imagine dropping billions of dollars. And I don't mean millions, we're talking literally billions. You spend years engineering, researching, dumping cash into marketing, all for this one revolutionary product that's supposed to change the world. Well, today we're looking at what happens when that revolution spectacularly blows up in everyone's faces. And in one case, I mean that completely literally. These are jaw-dropping failures fueled by massive egos and totally misread markets. From a billion-dollar smartphone that lasted just 48 days to an actual hazard that cost $17 billion to clean up, we are diving into the absolute most expensive tech flops in history.
Welcome to this QualiFIVE Explainer. This is your go-to spot for the top 5 best and, well, today, the absolute worst in the world, where quality meets quantity. If you're ready to decode that ridiculously fine line between a massive breakthrough and a total disaster, you're in exactly the right place. Because the sheer scale of the money lost here, it's going to completely warp your perspective on corporate decision-making. All right, let's jump straight into the countdown.
Kicking things off at number 5. The year is 2014. An absolute titan of e-commerce is crushing it, right? They're dominating online shopping, their e-readers are everywhere, and riding high on that massive success, they decide to step into the big leagues. They were going to take on the undisputed king of the mobile world, the Apple iPhone.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because this right here, this was peak hubris, the Amazon Fire Phone. Jeff Bezos gets up on stage, proudly holding this device, totally unaware of the absolute doom it's about to bring his hardware division. They packed this thing with what they thought were killer features. A super gimmicky 3D screen that tracks your face, and, get this, a dedicated physical button just to buy stuff on Amazon. But they made a massive, fatal error. They totally forgot the essentials. The phone didn't even have basic Google apps. Consumers took one look and instantly rejected it. It was too expensive, didn't have the software anyone actually used, and honestly, it felt way less like a smartphone and way more like carrying around a portable Amazon cash register. And that rejection wasn't just the polite, no thanks. It was an absolute financial bloodbath. Amazon had already manufactured a mountain of these phones, expecting, massive demand. When nobody bought them, they had to swallow a $170 million write-down on just the unsold inventory alone. They pulled the plug shortly after. It was an incredibly harsh, very expensive lesson for Amazon to basically stay in their software lane. $170 million, just poof, gone. And the crazy part? That is the cheapest mistake on our list today.
Which brings us to number 4, and watch how fast these numbers escalate, because it gets wild. Let's travel back to 2010. Microsoft is feeling the heat in the smartphone wars, so they decide to target a very specific demographic, teenagers. And to capture this youth market, they set aside a development budget of, wait for it, $1 billion. Yes, billion with a B.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when boardroom executives try to guess what teens want. For that staggering $1 billion, Microsoft gave us the Kin. It had this quirky, weirdly rounded shape, a slide-out keyboard, and a user interface totally obsessed with social media updates. But there was a massive disconnect here. They somehow forgot to include an app store, no games. Honestly, they didn't even include a basic calendar. A $1 billion smartphone for teenagers with literally no apps or games. Oh, and they paired it with incredibly expensive data plans. Just a perfect recipe for disaster.
Which leads to the absolute most shocking punchline of the Microsoft Kin. 48. That's it. That is the exact number of days this billion-dollar project survived on store shelves. The sales were catastrophically low, the public backlash over those data plans was intense, and Microsoft had to pull the plug just 48 days after launch. Think about that. They effectively flushed $1 billion down the drain in less than 2 months.
Moving right along to the number 3 spot. Now the year is 2020. The media landscape is shifting fast, and these Hollywood heavyweights decide they're going to completely reinvent streaming for smartphones. It was honestly a classic case of Hollywood arrogance, thinking they could just waltz in and beat Silicon Valley at its own game. So they raise an absolutely staggering $1.75 billion to make it happen.
Enter Quibi. The whole premise was watching highly produced content exclusively on your phone. The gimmick? Quick bites, which is actually where the name Quibi comes from. Every single show was 10 minutes or less. The idea was you'd watch these while commuting on the train or, waiting in line for coffee. But there were 2 massive flaws baked right into this $1.75 billion idea. First, they charged users a monthly fee, completely ignoring the fact that giants like TikTok and YouTube were already serving up an infinite feed of short-form mobile content for free.
But the second flaw is what truly nailed the coffin shut. Timing is literally everything in business, and Quibi? They launched a commuting app right at the start of a global pandemic. You literally couldn't script worse timing. Suddenly, no one is commuting. We're all stuck at home, staring at our massive TVs, definitely not looking to pay for 10-minute videos on our phones. Because of this, Quibi bled cash at an unbelievable rate. The whole billion-dollar platform collapsed and shut down entirely in just 6 months.
Okay, everybody, take a deep breath. We are about to cross into our top 2. And let me warn you, we're leaving mere financial missteps in the dust and entering the realm of the most mind-blowing, catastrophic corporate losses in history. Before we drop these last 2, make sure to hit that subscribe button to keep exploring the crazy mechanics of success and failure with us. We drop top-tier explainers just like this all the time, and you definitely won't want to miss what's next. All right, let's get back to the countdown for the biggest flops ever.
We are escalating the stakes dramatically at number 2. We aren't just talking about bad sales or terrible timing anymore. We're shifting to a product launch that became a literal explosive global hazard. The year is 2016, and the hype for this brand new premium smartphone is completely off the charts.
I'm talking, of course, about the infamous Samsung Galaxy Note 7. This was meant to be the crown jewel, the absolute pinnacle of Samsung's lineup. Instead, it turned into a total nightmare. Right after launch, reports started rolling in about critical battery defects. And these weren't just software glitches. The phones were physically catching fire, literally exploding. It escalated into an absolute crisis so fast that the Note 7 was officially banned from all commercial airlines worldwide. You literally could not step foot on an airplane if you had this thing in your pocket.
So the crucial point here is the sheer, devastating scale of the fallout. Samsung had to issue a global recall of over 2.5 million devices. They had to completely scrap the entire production line for their flagship phone. Between the logistics of getting all those phones back, processing millions of refunds, and just the brutal hit of lost sales, it was an unprecedented crisis in consumer trust. The final bill, an estimated $17 billion. Just think about that jump. We went from a $1.75 billion failure at number 3 straight to $17 billion. It's just staggering.
Which brings us to peak anticipation for number 1. I mean, what could possibly top a $17 billion exploding phone? Well, the most expensive tech flop in history is a corporate pivot so unimaginably huge, so completely all-consuming that it forced a major tech giant to literally change its entire company name back in 2021.
Our number 1 spot belongs to Meta's Reality Labs, the division responsible for the metaverse. Mark Zuckerberg decided to change Facebook's name to Meta, essentially betting the entire future of his social media empire on a virtual reality universe. They poured mountains of cash into Reality Labs for VR headsets and these sprawling digital worlds. But it revealed a harsh truth about tech. You can't just buy a shift in consumer behavior. The tech actually has to solve a problem people have. And this grand vision of a fully immersive digital life, it was met with a massive collective shrug from the general public.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the unfathomable scale of the financial crater it created. Sure, the Metaverse project is technically still alive, but the losses are already unprecedented in human history. Between 2021 and the end of 2023 alone, Meta's VR division lost over $40 billion. I really want you to let that sink in. $40 billion. They burned the equivalent of a small country's entire GDP on a digital world that, let's be honest, remains largely empty. It's a gamble of historic proportions, completely dwarfing anything else the tech world has ever seen.
To really wrap your head around this, just think about the sheer, mind-numbing scale of these disasters side by side. We started off with Amazon's $170 million embarrassment, which at the time felt massive. Then we jumped to the billion-dollar Kin and the $1.75 billion crash of Quibi. But the losses at the very top? They make those earlier mistakes look like pocket change. Samsung's exploding Note 7 cost 10 times what Quibi lost, sitting at $17 billion. And then Meta takes the crown, more than doubling Samsung's catastrophe with over $40 billion evaporated in just a couple of years. It just goes to show, when you fail at the absolute top of the tech world, you fail spectacularly.
Looking at all of this, it honestly makes you wonder what on earth was going on inside those boardroom walls. But I want to pass the question over to you. Which one of these massive failures surprised you the most? Was it the ridiculous 48-day lifespan of the Kin, or the unbelievable $40 billion black hole of the metaverse? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'd absolutely love to read what you think.
And there you have it, the definitive list of the top 5 most expensive tech flops in history. Thank you so much for watching this explainer. If you want to keep exploring the most fascinating stories out there, just click on the screen right now for our next top 5 list. But before you go, all of this leaves us with one incredibly unsettling question. In a world where tech giants have deeper pockets than actual nations, what is the next $40 billion mistake going to look like? And are any of these companies truly too big to fail?